Well, the archery deer season is here and the rifle season is just around the corner. It's a subject that stirs a lot of interest and some controversy as well. We're going to talk about that and a lot more with the Upper Peninsula's longtime and only representative on the Michigan Natural Resources Commission. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is the Ryan Report. Now here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, Junior Richardson was appointed to the Natural Resources Commission by Governor Jennifer Granholm in 2007. He was reappointed by Governor Rick Snyder in 2011 and again in 2014. He was named chairman of the commission in 2013 and currently serves as its vice chairman. He is the only current resident of the Upper Peninsula serving on the commission. I believe he's also the longest serving member, but we'll verify that with him. Junior Richardson, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. We're excited to be here.
Are you the longest serving member of the present commission?
That's on the present commission. Yes, I am.
Okay.
And I'm thrilled to be that. It's exciting for me to be appointed by a Democratic governor and then be reappointed by a Republican twice. So it feels good for me to cross those lines. That's
good because a lot of those appointments are often politically oriented. Right. Let's talk about you for a minute. We'll get back to the commission and some of the issues. Sure. You're a Ontonagon resident and I think a lifelong Uper.
I was born and raised, and not many people can say this, I was born and raised in White Pine, Michigan at the hospital. And I've lived my entire life in Ontonagon, the western end of the Upper Peninsula. And I actually went to Michigan Tech to college, and I don't want to age myself, but the late 70s and early 80s with a chemical engineering degree, and I never wanted to leave. I never wanted to leave the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I was fortunate enough to be able to find jobs that that were worthy of the degree and worthy of me working for them.
You worked in the paper industry for many years.
I worked in the paper mill for 31 years, basically. So.
And then you also, right now, are involved with a power plant in White Pine.
I work at White Pine now, and they have what's called Porcupine Mountain Power, and we actually run the power plant in White Pine. We have a refinery there. We have Subterra, which is an underground pharmaceutical growing facility, and we are involved with the place in Lawrence, Michigan at a biofuel plants.
Okay. According to your bio, you're an avid fly fisherman, annual backpacker in the Porkies, hunter and stamp collector and outdoorsman. Except for that stamp and antique part, it seems kind of a natural for the Natural Resources Commission.
Well, being at the mouth, at the base of the Porcupine Mountains all your life, you're gonna like to go backpacking. We spent a lot of time up in Mirror Lake, and the Porcupine Mountains was something that was just part of in our blood, and my cousins lived in Montana, so I spent a lot of time. I was actually a fly fishing guide in Montana in the summers when I went to Michigan Tech. And then, if you're going to live in the UP and you're going to live where we live, loving the outdoors is just part of your DNA. So.
Well, and I guess that's important for people to know that you're just not some guy sitting in an office somewhere. You're someone who personally involved with the outdoors.
Right. I mean, Senator Prusi, we all remember Senator Prusi come and phone me and asked me if I'd be interested in being on this commission. And the reason he did that is because he knew my dedication to the outdoors and also the environmental concepts of the Upper Peninsula and the people of it. So, that always thrilled me to have the senator believe in me to come and find me in Ontonagon, because that's not the first thing you think of when you're looking for a appointee, I'm sure. So.
If you go to Ontonagon, you have to have a reason for going there. It's not often you pass through.
Yeah, it's unfortunately.
Let's talk about the Natural Resources Commission. Unlike some boards and commission, this is not just an advisory group. You actually make some important policy decisions. Talk to us about that.
Well, since Proposal G was passed, and it's a sign that it gave us the authority to set the game regulations for hunting and fishing, so we actually make those decisions. And basically, the whole idea is it's science-based, so it's not politically based. So what they do is they assign 7 people to the Natural Resource Commission, and the whole idea behind that is it's a science-based committee, and you make, so you rely on the biology and the science of whatever we're looking at, and make the decisions, first based on science. And then if the science is neutral, you look at some of the social aspects of what's going on. And, a lot of times, it's always interesting to me to go to, you go to meetings in the UP, and I try to go to as many sportsmen's meetings as I can. And I'll tell people to vote on a deer regulation or we'll do a straw poll or a fishing regulation, and it'll be exactly 50-50.
Really?
And they said, so you want to know how hard this is to set regulations when the scientists even look around the room? And it'll stun them, because everybody thinks what they're thinking is what everybody else is thinking, and that is not the way it works. So.
It's never that way. You know, speaking of that, there are some citizens advisory committees now. Talk to us about that a little bit.
When we started this out, there was a lot of controversy, and when we were first on here, and a lot of it was based on the way our transparency and the way we budgeted and the way we spent the sportsman's money. And a lot of what we do is driven by license fees, and people wanted to know if they're buying a hunting or a fishing license or a permit for the parks, that the money was going to the right places. And part of that was that we wanted to reach out to the citizens of the Upper Peninsula and have the stakeholders talk to us. So we set up, basically through Stacy Welling, the Eastern and Western Citizen Advisory Council, and the whole idea is to get an array of stakeholders, anything from partnership groups to conservation groups to environmental groups to industry to whoever, and then we would appoint them and get the Citizen Advisory Group to actually advise us, the Michigan DNR Commission, on important issues of the Upper Peninsula. And the voice is heard. I mean, I try to go to as many meetings as I can in the West and the East, and I can't tell them enough on what your voice is heard. And without you telling us what you think, it's me going on there trying to relate to Lansing, here's what's going on in the Upper Peninsula. And when I have the voice from the Western and the Eastern CACs, and we'll give them, things to discuss, anything from deer regulations to how we plant walleyes to, how we harvest trees for habitat or for, places like the Verso paper mill.
Right.
We need the input for them to come and tell us, hey, this is what we think, and there's what the people in the Upper Peninsula are thinking, and it's, I can't tell you the value it's been to me.
There's some people sitting out there now who are thinking, when's he going to talk about deer hunting? We're going to do that after we take a break. I'll be back with more in just 2 minutes.
Yeah, it was like...
These are those moments when they can see us, but they can't. Our guest this morning is Junior Richardson. He's the vice chairman of the Michigan Natural Resources Commission, guy from Montonagon who spends time in the outdoors himself. Okay, deer hunting. Big issue, a lot of controversy every year, kind of goes on and on. It's been that way for a long time. Let's talk about it in this way. What are some of the new regulations? What are some of the issues we're facing, and what are we doing about those issues? So first of all, new regulations this year. I know there's some changes involving doe hunting, for example. What else are hunters expecting or experiencing?
Well, what basically happened, and if we live in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and what you saw in the last 3 years was 3 of the most extreme winters we've had for a long, long time. And we all drive around the UP, and you can tell by driving to wherever you're going, you just don't see a lot of deer. And the way I describe it is, like 3 years ago, we lost half of our deer in the first severe winter. The next year we lost half of those, and last year we lost half of those. So generally speaking, we have 75% less deer than we had going into the winter of 4 years ago. So what we thought is we have to react to this and do what we can to try to maintain the deer herd that we have. So the first thing I look at it as a three-legged stool, and the first thing we looked at is doing the deer regulations in June. And the thing that we thought could make the fastest impact would be to look at deer hunting during bow season. And what we basically did is say on public and private land that we would not allow does to be harvested during archery.
Now that is a sore point with some archery hunters. I know that. I know I've heard from some of them.
But it's a short-term sacrifice for a long-term goal. So I hear it too, and they'll come
I'm
up.
sure you do.
And my exact thing is we have. This is not a short-term thing. This is a long-term thing, right. And we'll save probably 6,000 female deer this year by doing that. And if people, we would ask them to understand that, it's not about, what's it going to be, what it's going to look like next year. It's about what it's going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And we can't afford, if we have another rough winter, we just can't afford to lose 6,000 female, mother deer. Through bow hunting, and I will make, I hope everybody understands that, and that's right. What it's all about. And most people, when you explain it to them, they understand that. They don't, they don't like it because deer hunting's near and dear to their heart, and bow
right.
hunting is a big deal. But at the end of the day, it's a common sense right thing to do. my opinion. And when you talk, and I go out of my way to go to the UP Whitetails and the Upper Peninsula Sportsman Society, and wherever I can go and communicate that to them. And I think at the end of the day that most people would agree that something had to be done, and it had to be done soon.
Are there any other major regulation changes affecting hunters?
No, not for this year.
Okay, so with the deer herd, as I see it, weather, habitat, and predators are probably the big issues.
Absolutely.
Can't do much about the weather. Kind of hoping El Nino may do something this year. We'll see how that works out. But I know habitat is a big consideration and something you're working on. Tell us about what's going on in that area.
We restarted the Upper Peninsula UP Habitat Work Group, and basically what we did, and Jim Hamill has worked with me, he's ex-DNR employee, and what we decided to do is it actually was spawned out of, I was up doing some flyovers doing wolf counts. As crazy as that, And we go do that, and we also do a moose counting. And I was looking at the terrain, and you could see where they were cutting out a lot of historic winter deer ranges. And I was going like this, this stuff is not going to come back in the next 50 years. We have to do something about maintaining those deer range areas. And so when we got down, I called up Jim Hamill. We put together a group of stakeholders, and it would be anywhere from the Ottawa National Forest to Plum Creek to, GMOs to, all the different stakeholders, the tribal members come. And what we said is we have to sit down and figure out who owns these deer yards. So the first thing we did is through the GIS mapping system, is we went through and mapped where all the deer yards are in the Upper Peninsula.
And one of the key points is, I think it's something like 80% is actually not controlled by the DNR.
Yeah, I mean, people think we own a lot of land, which we do, but a lot of the land that the deer use for winter habitat is not owned by the state. Some's owned by the federal government, and most of it's owned by the private citizen.
Right.
So you got to reach out to the private citizen and say, hey, we have mapped out where all the winter deer range yards are, and you happen to be a part of this, and here's what you can do to help us try to maintain this. Because you're talking about a generation's worth of habitat, and deer have a long memory, and they remember where they go to do their habitat. So they're, generations of deer will go to the same place. If they show up there, and there's no deer yard there, and it's snowing, remember what happened last November 14th? It snowed 4 feet, the day before deer season.
Right. If
those deer start moving and they go to their normal habitat area and it's not there, they are not going to find the next one. And they're, it's the perfect storm for the deer. So after we after we mapped them all out, and then we figured out who owned them, and now we're reaching out to everybody and say, here's what you can do to help us with the habitat, and it's been extremely successful. We reached out to ATC, we reached out to Semco Gas. I mean, a lot of things roll out of it. Who owns it and why do they own it, and most, almost to the person that we've contacted, everybody understands it and does everything in their power to try to help us on our quest.
Okay, we have to take a break. I'll get back with more, and I want to talk about predators too, but we'll get back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Our guest is Junior Richardson, Natural Resources Commission. Didn't quite finish up on deer hunting. What about predators? Wolves is a huge issue. Well, a lot of controversy, a lot of emotions on that issue.
Wolves will stir up as much passion as any word you can say in the UP. And we have a lot of respect for the wolf population. And wolves are, they're part of the ecosystem, but in the long term, I think managing them, that's my personal opinion, is a good thing. And we have a wolf management plan that, as soon as they're federally endangered right now, they got relisted on the federal endangered species list. So until the federal government moves on that, there's nothing that, there isn't anything that the state can do. And when they do, we're going to go right to the wolf management plan. We'll look at that, and we'll look at what we have to do next. So next thing is we're doing predator prey studies with the University of Mississippi. And what basically we're trying to do is figure out what does what to the deer. So you got winter, you have, wolves, you have coyotes, you have bears. They have a lot of predators. You have a lot of places like where I was working the paper mill in Onondaga. The paper mill no longer exists, so you have less cutting there. Right. So it's almost a perfect storm where you have the highest amount of snow, the most predators, and not a lot of cutting. So you darn sure should keep the habitat there. So
Right.
It's been real interesting.
I'm going to have you back in the spring to talk about some of the other issues, but I know that family-friendly fishing is one issue that you're really concerned about. Tell us about that.
Well, thank you. It's near and dear to my heart, and I look at one of our big goals is to get kids in the woods, and you got to make it so when they go there, it's an enjoyable experience.
Right.
So, and a lot of people don't know about where to go and what to do. So what we did is we developed a family-friendly fishing, and it's actually, you can go to the Michigan DNR website and
right.
hit family-friendly fishing, and it'll show like in the Upper Peninsula, there's over 100 ponds. I think there's like 2.6 for every county, and you go on, you press Onondaga County, let's take Onondaga County, which I'm familiar with.
Right.
Press Onondaga County, it'll show like a place like the Rockland Pond, for an example, and we'll actually have a place where you can go in, where you can go get a rod and a reel, and hopefully the people give it for no cost, and a bobber, and you can go to that pond with your kids and fish in it, and it'll have stocked bluegills in it. So instead of going through, we try to make things so complicated that the way a kid will go fishing, if you take them on the Osabo River, you take them on Lake Superior. Right. What we want to do is you take them out, you sit them on a dock like they did in the old days, throw out a bobber and catch them fish and catch them immediately and give them that feeling to love the outdoors. And what we're trying to do is make sure every county has a chance at doing that. So we're actually rearing the bluegills now and planting them in the areas. So if you have a place in your area, in your county, that that you would like to see that, please contact us and we can set that up for you, and it's been extremely positive.
So you want a place that's easy to get to, convenient?
Yeah, right downtown Bessemer we did one, I mean, like Sunday Lake and Wakefield Lake. Yeah, it's there, closer to town the better, and make it so, Monday morning in the middle of summer, the mother wants to take her, or father wants to take their kid fishing. There's a little dock. They can get a pole and a bobber and catch them fish and enjoy themselves, and hopefully we'll hook them for life,
Okay, and before we go, only a minute left, but it's not just about recreation, is it? There are huge economic impacts to Michigan's natural resources, and
well, I always say there's a lot of people that wish they had as many natural resources as the state of Michigan has, and we have an abundance of resources anywhere from the copper mining to a lot of things that we're involved in, and it's mostly fiber-based. We grow a lot of sustainable trees, and our ability to utilize what we have within the state of Michigan to grow the economy is near and dear to my heart, and it's something that we have to take a real close look at and how we do that. And we have, for the good of the UP, we have to develop long-term diversified economies and use the sustainable resources that we have. We have a lot of renewable resources. Let's put some people to work using them. So.
And of course, also things like state parks and recreation.
Oh, the state parks! I mean, what a gem! I mean, how can you get a better deal than going to the state parks in Michigan? You use your passport. You go to any state in the state of Michigan. Any park, and how can you create something like Porcupine Mountains? You couldn't build it. It's just the most beautiful place you can ever go, and it's all open to the public for very, very low cost, and it's just something I would say anyone who's sitting in the house right now, get out, get in the car, go look at the leaves, and go to Michigan State Park. So.
It's really a key part of who we are. Thanks for coming in this morning to talk about it.
I appreciate it. I mean, you're such an influence on the people up here, and just for you to invite us in and talk about things that we love just means everything.
And we'll do it again, and maybe in the spring.
Thank you very much.
Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Well, it's time for a little nostalgia. Try to imagine a town bustling with excitement. Cars lined up at the Straits of Mackinac waiting to catch the ferry heading north. Hunters driving around town, displaying their bucks tied to the fender of their car. Yes, there was a time when cars actually had fenders you could use to transport the results of your hunt. And a lot less people had pickup trucks available for that purpose back then. Those are the memories that sweep through my mind as I think back to when I was a teenager growing up in Ishpeming. I wasn't a deer hunter, but I was very much aware of the excitement that swept through the entire community as the opening day of the season approached. I know there are still a lot of people who get pretty pumped up about the arrival of another hunting season, but it doesn't have quite the same buzz it did back in those days when television was just about to burst on the UP scene, when Elvis Presley was introducing us to rock and roll, and General Dwight Eisenhower was in the White House. It was that glorious time known as the 50s, and the deer hunting season was a magic time of year in Ishpeming and a lot of other places around the Upper Peninsula. The deer hunting conversation started weeks before the season arrived, as hunters made their annual plans for this ritual. As opening day drew closer, the anticipation became even more intense as hunters waited for that big day. This was not just a time for local hunters. There was that annual invasion from lower Michigan, as hundreds were waiting in Mackinac City to catch the ferry to the deer hunting promised land. Each year, rumors would sweep through the town that some Detroit Tigers or other celebrities were spotted somewhere in the city. It was also a good time for those who never chased the whitetail. Bars, grocery stores, and sporting good outlets all look forward to a November business boom. One of the traditions still in place today is the trip to the grocery store to get the needed supplies. Like today, men who are never seen in grocery stores at any other time during the year are out, usually in teams, buying the supplies they will need to get them through a week at deer camp. While there are some variations in the menu, from my observations it appears the most of them focus on the 3 B's: bacon, butter, and beer. One other important memory from that era was the nightly radio report called the Deer Hunters Roundup, which was one of my assignments as a young radio announcer. Every night we would provide information from the DNR, which I think was called the Conservation Department back then, but more importantly the nightly report on who got their buck and how many points it had. You know, deer hunting is still an important part of our culture, and it's one that also has a positive economic impact on our region. But it's not quite the same as it was in a bygone era that some still yearn for. Times change, and perhaps it never will be. But those glorious days from the past should be remembered, and let's hope the traditions they spawned will continue to be there for future generations. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Well, just about time for us to wrap it up for another week. I appreciate J.R. Richardson joining us this morning. Life in the outdoors is a big part of who we are up here, and the Natural Resources Commission plays a major part in that process. A couple of reminders before we go. Our show is also available on the internet at uppermichigansource.com. Click the feature tab on the home page and you can find us. And if you'd like to send us an email, just drop a message to the Ryan Report at chesstv.com. Today's show wants to get going, so we'll have to say goodbye. Hope you have a great day, and we'll join us again next Sunday morning.